Okay, so I don't know, guys. I'm going to confess, I lost all my Microsoft like software today, and I've had to kind of use a new one. And although it looks the same, the buttons do different stuff, and I keep making mistakes. So please be gentle and forgiving. Okay. So we are looking then at which publication. Okay, so we are the Guardian. Now, immediately, because this is quite common that in the exam they will use what we call credible and reputable publications. In other words, publications in some ways we should trust or be more trusting of. And sometimes they will use publications that were meant to be slightly distrustful of, a bit cynical of. Now, The Guardian historically is always associated with credible journalism. Okay, so we've got a publication from The Guardian, an established broadsheet newspaper that has now got a strong online presence. How do we know we're online? Because we've got the tabs across the top again. In a minute, we'll see there's some features as well that come up that are about hyperlinks and cross-platform links to things like Facebook. You can see we've got home, reference to the home page. We've got the opinion. We've got we're in the columnist section. We're in the feminism opinion section. So all of this detail, it's confirming we're online, but it's already beginning to position us as an audience, as a reader. It's already expecting us to adopt a certain position. Okay, now if we couple those features that we know we're online with some of the graphological features in terms of color, style, and design, and the byline, we could immediately start to think about differences to the other text. So here we've got blue versus pink. We recognize that the female was exploiting or perpetuating certain stereotypes. So it was very clearly using pink to signify a female readership, a stereotypical representation of a female readership. So from the color, we could immediately go to a point of difference. Here we've got this kind of blue, white, and orange color scheme. Now we could argue that this is quite neutral. This doesn't automatically signify a female readership. The choice of words suggests a particular leaning, a particular positioning of a reader, because we're looking at feminism. Do you see the orange word over there, feminism? But we could argue that they're establishing through the style and the design of the page, through the color choices, that this isn't meant to be a stereotypical representation of women, but a feminist representation of women. Maybe a more neutral, a more progressive representation of women. Okay, and that's coming through the progressive choice, the movement away from stereotypes. Okay, style and design, very typically journalistic, because we have our headline. What we also have that the other article didn't is we do have a stand first. So we've got differences, could be visual, different color scheme. We've got a difference in that this article has a stand first, the other didn't. Okay, now in terms of byline, our other article was by an anonymous Daily Mail reporter. Here we've got a clear byline that indicates that this is the writer Naomi Wolf, that she is a columnist, and we have a nice little picture of her. So this is very much a clear identification of a person behind this article. Naomi Wolf, she has a face, she's a columnist, and that's another difference, another contextual difference to the female article, where it was much more a composite article, kind of like this modern cheap production way of doing journalism, where we take lots of different sound bites from other articles and put them together. So we've already got lots of differences already coming through the graphological features. Okay, however, how are they similar? Now, if we were just looking at the graphological features before we look at the language, we could say, well, they are both targeting a female readership. Feminism is targeting a female audience, a predominantly female audience, and similarly, female is also targeting that same audience. So we could say both are intending to appeal to female readers, women readers, but Daily Mail through a stereotypical representation, pink, babies, fashion. Here we've got a seemingly more progressive representation of women. Okay, so we could see a link that they're both targeting women. Okay, so let's have a look. What's the headline sentence function and sentence type? Okay, so young women give up the vocal fry and reclaim your strong female voice. So we've got this opening noun phrase, young women. So as soon as we start with the subject, we're looking at either a declarative or an exclamatory. It can't be imperative. Sorry, and we look at the end and there's no question mark or exclamation mark. Okay, it can't be an imperative because it doesn't begin with a verb. Okay, in the initial position. It can't be an interrogative because it's not asking a question. It's not an exclamatory. So we are looking at a declarative. Now, you could argue that this is a declarative. This is an imperative, a command hiding as a declarative. So kind of hedging the strength of what really follows after this noun phrase, young women, because then it does go into a main clause led by the verb give up. Give up the vocal fry. Young women, give up the vocal fry and reclaim your strong female voice. So we've got two independent clauses. Give up the vocal fry, reclaim your strong female voice, connected through this and. So we've got a declarative compound sentence. Okay, it's a compound sentence because that's a compound coordinating conjunction and it's linking together these two clauses that could operate as separate units, separate units of meaning. Give up the vocal fry, reclaim your strong female voice. Now, there are similarities there that link back to the other article. The targeting, the direct targeting and identification of young women as being the main focus of both articles. Both articles target that demographic, that young female demographic. So they're both similar because they're targeting the same readership, young women. Okay, they're both similar because they are addressing this topic of vocal fry. So they've got a similar topic. And actually both advocate or suggest that vocal fry is somehow damaging to women. So actually they're doing it in very different ways, but they are approaching the same topic of advocating that vocal fry is somehow damaging for women. Give up, give it up, girls, give up, let go of vocal fry, and instead reclaim that verb choice, take back your strong female voice. Okay, so the implication there's an inferred set of oppositions there, isn't it? Reclaim a strong female voice, suggesting that vocal fry is not strong. Okay, so what's the antithesis to being strong? So that adjective choice, strong. On the other side of that, this idea that women, when they use vocal fry, are somehow weakening, okay, their voice. So there is a tension introduced in this headline, okay, that vocal fry somehow is negative, is detrimental to women, whereas they have a choice to reclaim a strong female voice. Okay, now we said that this one is different because it's got our stand first, and here it is. What's heartbreaking about the trend for destructive speech patterns is that yours is the most transformational generation. You're disowning your power. So in that stand first, which adjective shows an emotional perspective? Did you get it? Heartbreaking. Okay. Now, it's an adjective, not a verb, even though it ends in ing, because it's being used here to describe the process, the verb. It's being used to describe, okay, the trend for destructive speech patterns. It's a modifier. And it's heartbreaking. So it starts with quite an emotive plea by Naomi Wolf. What's heartbreaking? Her heart is broken by what is happening. So not afraid to go in at the emotional appeal, okay, appealing to their pathos, their emotions. Now, which adjective represents the speech pattern as negative? Good. Destructive. So somehow speech patterns such as vocal fry, which is introduced in the headline, are destructive. Okay, they're taking away, they're destroying something. Clearly negative. And then which pronoun is creating that relationship between our feminist opinion of Naomi Wolf and our readership? Good. She keeps repeating you, the second person pronoun, which is a key feature of synthetic personalization. You, your. Okay, so we've got the pronoun you, and we've got the determiner yours. Okay, so all of this is acting to create a personal appeal. Okay, Naomi Wolf is making a personal, emotional appeal to younger women. And what's she appealing for them to do? To give up vocal fry and reclaim a strong voice. So actually, her opinion about vocal fry is very similar to Lake Bell's. Lake Bell, of the other article, does think vocal fry is detrimental. She wouldn't potentially hire or want a woman around her using vocal fry. Similarly, Naomi Wolf is suggesting right away that she is also anti-vocal fry, that there's something about vocal fry which disempowers women. Look at that lovely kind of final clause. You're disowning your power. So it's quite an accusation that women are somehow losing power when they speak this way. So the job now of Naomi Wolf is through the rest of the article to convince us to agree with her. Now, we might agree, or we might still be like the third and final opinion of the last article we read. We might be like Carmen Fort. The truth is this, that women use vocal fry and they have ownership of it. And it's not about being disempowered, but using their power in a different way. So we've got all this tension to work out as we're reading this article. Are we going to agree with Naomi Wolf? Are we going to disagree with Naomi Wolf? Are we going to agree with Carmen Fort of the other article, the other opinion, which seems to be the standout opinion? Okay, so we're going to look at this last bit for today, and then we'll finish looking at the rest of the article next week. So this is an article, and I just want to focus on this because one of the things for the higher grades is always looking at the whole context, not just looking at the main article itself, but looking at what's going on around it. And actually, this is a nice little example of an article that they have used in the past. This is a real past paper that has lots of information going on around it that you could get extra marks, extra credit. You could show that BA grade understanding of how the whole text is working. So I just want us to zoom in that we've got a picture here and it's captioned. Now, this can be a feature of articles. Some will do it, some won't. And I always think if it's there and you've got time and you're going for those A's and the B's, don't ignore it. Okay, so right under our headline and our stand first, before we get to the main body of the article, they have this quite big picture. Okay, now it's quite a clever picture once we look at the whole article. It's quite an abstract seeming picture. We've got this woman. Now, if you look closely at her lips, can you see the animal hiding there? I've just seen it. Looks like a duck. Now, that comes up later. Okay, we've got this young woman that seems to have, is it almost like a phone overlaid across her face, like the screen of a phone? So this is seemingly a modern abstract representation of young women today. The duck will make sense in a minute, but there is an implication that women are framing themselves by maybe social media or new technology. Is that a criticism that's going to come up? So anyway, we've got this strange abstract picture, and then underneath it we have a caption. A study found that this speech pattern makes young women who use it sound less competent, less trustworthy, less educated, and less hireable. And it's an illustration by Noma Barr. So, what's the source of this information? Where's this opinion coming from? Immediately, what can you see? Yeah, it's using that noun, a study. Now, this study isn't at this stage expanded. We don't know where this study's come from, but we're seemingly going to trust it because it's a study. Okay, and what did it find? It found that this speech pattern, so now this is a cohesive device, is taking us 3 steps back. We're stepping back into the stand first and then back one more step into the headline. So this is about this speech pattern vocal fry. So vocal fry makes young women who use it sound less competent, less trustworthy, less educated, and less hireable. So a quick little reminder here that adjectives, yep, we can identify adjectives as a word class. That's really important. But if you can do the double label, comparative adjective, predicative, attributive, it gets you higher placement on that AO1 mark scheme. So a little reminder that adjectives can be what we call comparative. Adjectives, when we learn to use adjectives in describing words, is often because we're comparing X and Y. We're comparing 2 things together when we make sense of the world. So a comparative adjective can be formed by using either more or most, less or least, or an ER or an EST. So she was the best, she was better, she was the most educated, she was more educated than me, she was the less educated person in the room, she was the least educated. So you can see when we use comparative adjectives, we are creating comparison. We're saying X versus in comparison to Y. So can we just list those 4 comparative adjectives to end with today? Brilliant. So the argument here is that if women use vocal fry, they are less competent. Now, competent means not as good as they should be in their job. They are less trustworthy. They are less educated and less hireable, so less likely to get a job.